Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson go on a camping trip. Sherlock nudges his friend in the middle of the night. He says, "Watson, wake up, look at the sky and tell me what you see." Watson replies, "I see millions and millions of stars." And Sherlock Holmes says, "Well, what does that tell you?" Watson thinks about this for a moment and then he says, "Astronomically, it tells me that there are millions of galaxies and possibly billions of planets. Astrologically, I can see that Saturn is in Leo. Horologically, I can tell that the time is maybe 3:15 in the morning. Theologically, I think God is all-powerful and we're all very small. Meteorologically, I think we'll have a beautiful day tomorrow." Why? What does it tell you, Sherlock? And Sherlock Holmes says, "Watson, it means somebody has stolen our tent." My name is Siya Khumalo, and welcome to our final session where we're exploring how to work sustainably for human rights, particularly with regards to gender and sexuality. And the reason I shared this joke is that while the world is complex, it's easy to miss the simplicity of what we're looking at, to miss the wood for the trees. We started with a story about Sarah and Blue, and Blue looked at the complexity of gender and sexuality and thought, maybe I need to start the gender reassignment process. And then Sarah said, wait, and after a while, Blue's like, oh, maybe just waiting is a good idea. What happened? I don't think Sarah said anything that changed Blue's mind. I think in the passage of time, Blue realized that they were sufficiently knowable, not completely knowable. They were sufficiently knowable and lovable just as they were, without undergoing the gender reassignment process, without doing any further work. And once they'd calmed down into that realization, they then saw the wisdom of waiting. I can't tell you when's a good age to begin the gender reassignment process. What I can tell you is sometimes we miss the wood for the trees, or we miss the kind of problem we're looking at. Are you passionate about gender and LGBTI rights? If you are, you may finish school and decide to study a liberal arts degree. But bear in mind that the people with the most job security are those who are solving the world's simplest problems. It's the plumbers, it's the electricians. Gender and sexuality can become complicated, but sometimes that complexity just compounds itself. It feeds on itself. When you think that the problem you're looking at is a gender problem and not a connectivity or a connection problem, you may think that a gender solution will solve it. Sometimes it's a connection problem. Sometimes it's time that you really need. So your generation, I'm telling you all of this because your generation now has to balance two sets of priorities. The first is progress. How do we maximally accommodate everyone? The other priority is capacity. How many differences can be explicitly accounted for at this very moment? And at what age does a very young person get the right to decide for themselves who and what they are and how that's going to be expressed? So there are all of these logical constraints we have to work with. Think about it this way, since we started off speaking about a bride. Imagine you're hosting a party and you ask people their dietary requirements. You're probably going to get some people needing halal food, you're going to get some needing vegan food, some having allergies that need to be accommodated for, and so on and so forth. As the host, you have to exercise your discretion in figuring out how many requirements you can accommodate within your budget and how many are whims. Maybe somebody's being a hypochondriac and they think they're allergic to something. You have to use your discretion. You're gonna offend some people, it's just the way it is. One of your guests might say maybe that they need a drink, a very expensive drink that's just recently hit your supermarkets that costs a lot of money and everyone's talking about it, it's popular, but you might decide that that doesn't fit your budget. And then you also have to recognize that maybe what that guest is doing is using peer pressure. We spoke about this earlier, and that it doesn't look like peer pressure at that moment. It just looks like this is the drink everybody needs. But do they really need it, or are they confusing needs and wants? Again, you've got to use your discretion when you do that. Because the purpose of a party isn't getting stuck in the planning stage. The purpose of a party isn't for you to panic about the budget and to panic about who'll be left out and who'll be offended and who won't. The purpose of the party is to create an environment where people can connect. And that environment doesn't have to be perfect. You don't need the full variety of soft drinks. You just need enough from each range of flavors for those people who like citrus to say, okay, maybe I didn't get lemon, but I got orange, and grapefruit was missing, but hey, there was orange. You just need some of everything. And so you have to play within the constraints of what you can do and also what you want to do. You don't have to be perfect. but you do just have to be considerate. When people insist on tweaking things to the nth degree, they're often acting from a place of insecurity. What they're really saying is, look, the world isn't built for me, it isn't built to understand me, so let me find all the reasons I'm different, turn those into labels so that I can explain myself and be understood. But sometimes in the act of trying to do that, you cut off the silence and the space that's needed for connection. Look at what happened between Sarah and Blue. Again, it wasn't Sarah's words that convinced Blue, it was Sarah's presence. And for people to be present, you don't need to accommodate every single taste for every single flavor of cold drink. You just need to have enough to keep the conversation going, enough to keep people there. Sometimes the catering options at the party need to be adjusted instead of you adjusting. Sometimes those options are as diverse as they're going to get and you have to adjust. But the most important thing is that everyone should feel invited into a conversation of discovering what happens next. And instead of being scared that they'll get cancelled, instead of being scared that they'll get fired from their jobs, that people who are invited into the conversation of what happens next need to feel like it's safe to say, here's what I don't know as yet. And for that to happen, we have to be prepared to help one another see the complexity or the simplicity behind the complexity rather. If we're not patient with one another, party ends. And if the party doesn't happen, if nobody feels safe to come to the party, human rights don't happen. That's the danger when people don't feel like they're ready to join the party, if they feel like they're not ready to join the conversation. If people have to know everything there is to know before they can participate, there won't be enough people participating, there won't be enough people pushing the conversation forward, and the gains we have disappear. So right now we're fighting for maybe pronouns or maybe access to a particular type of hormone or for the recognition of same-sex unions, whatever we're fighting for, that rolls back if not enough people feel like they can join that conversation because they don't know everything as yet. So here's a class discussion. What are the simple things you need for a space to feel inclusive? The simple things, the basics that anybody and everybody can agree on. Talk about it.